Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Parag Pitafi. Yes, once again we are going to talk about India because the situation in India is getting worse and worse every day. One democracy or one country that was known as the world's largest democracy systematically has dismantled one institution after the other. We know that even before the elections, the Indian Prime Minister and his cohorts from BJP were actually using the entire state machinery to get him elected. It even came to the possibility of a war with Pakistan. And surprise, surprise, Indian Election Commission never took notice of that. That is not all. Even after especially getting elected, they began by dismantling the status of Indian occupied Kashmir, and then it didn't stop there. They have been going on with various other things, especially when it comes to Kashmir. There we have seen repression like no other. So-called democracy, a country that calls itself democracy, has, in a manner of speaking, turned an entire state into open-air prison. That is not all. Their bans continue, and yet Indian state institutions like India Supreme Court have not been able to come up with any kind of relief for the people. Although they have provided relief for other kind of people like BJP or their supporters, because we know that what happened to the situation regarding Ram Janam Bhoomi in Ayodhya or Babri Masjid's place. This is important, right? And then, of course, there is this talk of CAA. They passed it into a law. It is pretty discriminatory. And that is not all. Now we know that they are going to use every technique that was in the playbook of Hitler to subjugate the minorities of India. In one of the places, a statue of Jesus was to be built, and now RSS is actually threatening that Christian minorities will have to pay if they build that statue. These things are going on, and now West Bengal's BJP chief says that whosoever is going to actually oppose CAA will be buried alive. He will shoot and kill them. This is strange, and the world is watching with bated breath as the world's largest democracy, let us call it world's largest democracy, is actually destroying itself. And now something else has happened. Remember Pulwama? The DSP who was responsible of security there, and the DSP who was accused to have played a role in the parliament attack, someone who has been decorated, who has been awarded by the Indian state, was caught leaving Kashmir and going to New Delhi only 2 weeks before India's Republic Day, and he had two known militants with him and certain weapons as well. If you have noticed, recently we have heard that there have been speculation about a plot to attack Indian Prime Minister. So if you connect all these dots, you realize that there might be some kind of plan for a false flag operation where Indian Prime Minister could be targeted so that India's internal contradictions are put on back burner, and once again India can start blaming Pakistan or another neighbor country. Let us talk about these matters and more. In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined by Dr. Waqar Ali Kausar, who is an expert on Kashmir matters, India-Pakistan relationship as well. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Although I'm calling him sir, he definitely looks very young, right? So he is a young scholar. And next to him is Advocate Parvez Ahmed Saab, who is a leader of APHC. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is Javed Rana, senior journalist, senior analyst, needs no introduction, a regular on this show and a regular on this channel. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Dr. Waqar Ali Kausar, let us start by bringing out the focus on DSP Devendra Singh. What exactly do you think was happening there?
See, before that, we have seen that after the 5th of August, what happened within Indian occupied Kashmir.
Yeah.
What we have witnessed is that Indian state operators tried a lot to sort of, the crush the resistance of Kashmiri people through different ways. And
Right.
you've seen that internet blockade, you've seen that the life has been made miserable in all these things. But despite all these efforts in states, robust operators to crush the people's resistance, it didn't happen. You see, just 3 days before, the envoy from the different countries, they had a sort of a very guided tour in the valley, but at the end of the day, it didn't pay any...
And do you know who actually welcomed them there? This DSP Devendra Singh.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to connect that. I was trying to connect those dots. We have seen that Mehbooba Mufti was the chief minister of the pro-Indian party. She has expelled 8 members of her party, those who met this delegation. You can literally see the credibility of entire this thing.
Yeah.
So this was one effort of India to show the world normalcy and all these things, but it's not happening. We have just received the news about UNSC second hearing on Kashmir within 6 months. I guess it's going to happen on 15th of January. This is something which is reflective of India's impatience now. The world is putting a lot of pressure. The international media has put a lot of pressure. Now coming back to this case.
So we are building the context here to tell us why India would actually resort to some desperate means.
Because there are lots of opinions within Pakistan about the resistance movement and how Kashmiri society responded to after the 5th of August. But one thing we need to understand that was very much well-aware and conscious effort to resist this occupation through, if they are silent, it's also, if they have boycotted the state structures, institutions. This is a great manifestation of resistance that they have shown.
So we know about the desperation. Now tell us about this development.
So we have seen that this officer is a well-decorated officer. In past, I guess he has, Indian media reported that he has a lot of cases of corruption even as well in past, but still he was, sort of blue-eyed person. Now, in past, we have also seen that to undermine the resistance, to put the blame on Pakistan, to deflect the pressure within India, the state has created, sort of orchestrated something like that Pakistan is doing something. They have created certain sort of environment to create justification within their own constituency to do that. This was one effort.
Yeah, but these incidents like Pulwama happen at the worst time for Pakistan, and at times when it totally suits Indian leadership, especially BJP's leadership, like they had to be elected. Pulwama happens, Balakot happens, and boom, he is Prime Minister.
So within India now, the opposition voices are saying the same, that these actually incidents have benefited the ruling party in the elections as well. Now the fundamental question is, the way the media reported that he was ferrying to militants going towards the mainland, the idea was, in past it happened that there is a method of Indian state operators that they try to facilitate. One of the sections facilitate this, and knowingly, unknowingly, they facilitate this infiltration. And once this happened, the entire accusation, all these things come to Pakistan.
Your burden of blame would come to Pakistan. But very quickly, was somebody in BJP or their home ministry ready to throw Narendra Modi under the bus? Because they are repeatedly talking about a plot to kill him.
See, that's a very interesting question. But the way they have behaved, the way they have created the CAA, the way they are doing within their country, the way they have communalized it, I guess that's not benefiting BJP and Modi as well. I guess this is one of the worst governments they have seen within India.
Cull your own leadership and then create an environment where you become the victim. Let me bring in Advocate Parvez Ahmed Saab. Sir, your take on this entire episode. But I want you to actually highlight also the Afzal Guru case, where he accused the very same DSP of framing him and asking him to go to Delhi and actually accommodate those people who later were found attacking and then they were killed, the Indian Parliament.
Yes, of course. You just see that this DSP was the person who first arrested Afzal Guru prior to this Delhi plot when the Indian Parliament was attacked. He put him in the prison He tortured him, and then he demanded the bribe of 100,000 rupees from him. His wife sold his ornaments, and ultimately he was constantly being tortured, humiliated. And in order to create a goodwill with this person, he just asked him that you just do one thing for him. You just go to Delhi and just you have to rent a house for a person which was not known to him. And this was the only fault of Afzal Guru, and he was the main person. He plotted this whole story, and just he was
and the person hosted was actually someone who was
involved in the attack, and that person was ultimately killed in that attack.
And Afzal Guru writes it
yes,
in his
Afzal
letter.
Guru, when he was in prison, he wrote a letter to his lawyer that this person was involved. He was the person who has asked him to hire a house for that militant who attacked the Indian Parliament, but unfortunately no notice, no cognizance was taken of that case. But today, India is talking that this person, that the DSP was involved in the Afzal Guru's case. Afzal Guru has already written a letter, but when there is no evidence, Afzal Guru has been hanged, and unfortunately, and as Mr. Counsel has said,
this gentleman has not
this
been
is basically the rivalry of different intelligence agencies.
Which ones?
You see, there is IB is dealing the police, Kashmir police. RAW is dealing military and other forces. So there was a rivalry between the two agencies. And in
IB actually set him up.
Yes.
And then
another agency just arrested him, and they were not in coordination. And unfortunately, this guy
it was merely an accident, nothing else.
It was merely an accident, but there was a plot.
Is there a possibility, Parvez Saab, that it is actually India state which is pushing back right now? Because somehow they realize that the Sangh Parivar's project has failed miserably, and if India is to be saved, they'll have to start pushing back. India now has a new army chief.
Yes, of course, you have seen the new army chief statement recently. He even spoke about this Citizenship Amendment Act, and he was just, the opposition just criticized him that he is a person he should not involve. And we have seen
the previous army chief actually spoke about CAA. This one actually quoted the preamble of Indian Constitution, which is being used by the opposition, not the leadership.
No, I would just want to talk that now the Indian army is involved in the politics of the India, and they are this is just a backing which they are giving to the BJP government. You have just seen that the people, there are more than 56 petitions pending before the Supreme Court of India about this Citizenship Act, but no order has been passed.
Nobody is there,
and nobody is there, and no stay order has been passed.
No, actually, that building is hollow. It is empty. Nobody is there. Courage has left the building ages ago. Let me bring in Javed Rana. On one side, of course, we talk about our Supreme Court, and we saw how the Supreme Court actually highlighted the lacuna in the Army Chief's extension matter, right? The legal lacunas. On the other side, we see the Indian Supreme Court, which seems to have taken the leave of absence, minus only Babri Mosque Ayodhya case, where they actually delivered some kind of verdict, which was actually music to the ears of the ruling Sangh Parivar.
They have not taken up petitions, or if they have taken up, they have not handled those petitions legally and under the Constitution of India. You see, on Kashmir annexation, those petitions were not taken up, only to the extent that the internet service should be restored, some kind of very orders with a limited implications. And similarly, on Ayodhya, you know better than I do, that in what manner they actually, without having a hard evidence, they actually follow the agenda of a very extreme agenda of Indian ruling BJP party. And similarly, I think now many people call it that it is perhaps the part of RSS. The trouble is that
the Indian Supreme Court is part of RSS, Sangh Parivar.
You know,
it is not located in Nagpur, by the way.
It is in Delhi. Illogical. When people make comparison of two big democracies like the US democracies and Indian so-called democracies, they say in the USA, the state institutions have turned against Donald Trump. And they are not siding with him. They are trying to resist. But when it comes to India, the state institutions are fully backing the Indian ruling party.
Yeah. Indian Parliament passes Citizen Amendment Act within hours, right? Nobody actually stops it. Similarly, Article 370-35A annulment within no time. Parliament gone. The Supreme Court we have seen, and the Indian media, especially the mainstream Indian media that has some patronage, also seems to have gone totally crazy. So this is what you are saying, that entire Indian state has become hostage to Narendra Modi?
It's India, Indian media, it's Indian army, it's judiciary. They are all backing up Bharatiya Janata Party's religious agenda on India. We are still expecting that some sort of sanity may prevail in India. Many people are expecting. I don't expect that to happen.
Okay.
Because if you look around the leadership, the BJP leadership, they are following a very clear agenda, clearly saying that wherever you find Muslims, kill them. You see, and then they see everything in their own ideological framework, and they say that if you don't attack Pakistan, if you don't you expel these Muslims within the next couple of years, then their so-called quote-unquote gods would not come down from the Himalaya, and they would not help them.
Might I request you don't actually mention religion here, because we are talking about extremists, not any kind of ethos, right?
This is where from they draw their strength. And
no, they draw their strength from total xenophobia and hatred for the minorities. Is that not true?
You see, these two controversial legislation. One law is designed to expel Muslims, and another law is to bring in Hindus from the neighboring countries.
Right.
The very crux of which is
not just Hindus, other minorities.
Other minorities, but
minus Muslims.
But actually, as a matter of fact, they will only give citizenship to the Hindus. So I foresee that we do see Kashmir as a separate from what is happening in the northeast of India.
Right.
But Indian ruling party, they see it as an overall part on how to get rid of Muslims, how to contain them, and ultimately how to expel them, and how to force them to convert back to Hinduism.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're highlighting these issues, because there's this very strange kind of connection between NRC in Assam, then CAA, the way it came to address the concerns of Hindus and others who were caught without any documents in Assam, and then a nationwide NRC which is going to ask Muslims especially, because everybody else is covered, to identify whether they are Indians or not, and that can very easily be disproven. And then NPR, which seems to be creating some kind of intelligence-based files on people. That's how they're. Is it not exactly Nuremberg laws of Hitler?
Yeah, so see, this is an approach that it's an exclusionist approach, basically.
Right.
What happened in Assam, you have mentioned that despite all
1.9 million people.
So 0.5 million Hindus were excluded from that list, actually.
Yeah, 1.2 were actually the Hindus, and 0.7 were Muslims.
So the idea is that when you bring in those discriminatory things, the impact can go anywhere. Let's suppose when you say CAA and PR, this is not separate thing. Actually, they have amended the bill, and they brought in the bill, and then they amended the law by making it the extension of it. CAA and PR, these all things are extension of each other.
So trident
so
to attack the Muslims.
So idea is that you have to create a sort of mechanism through which what you can do first, you bring in the people in registration, and then you ask them that you have to prove your identity, and that is something which is very much disturbing within India. We have seen people coming out of their houses.
They are amazing people. Amazing people who are protesting right now. They are heroes. Civilization's heroes.
So we have also seen that there are detention centers in Assam for those people, those who could not prove.
Why do you call it detention center? Detention is usually temporary, and centers are usually small.
Concentration camps.
So
the actual word would be concentration camps.
So the idea is what is the approach? Approach is, generally we have seen that these minorities, particularly Muslim, these are political dimension as well, because these have been largely Congress votes. So what BJP want to do is that try to bring in, with their mandate, their idea, their manifesto was more towards Hindu Rashtra. And that we have seen that the CAA actually, when you say CAA, what is the classification? The classification is, if it's on the base that three countries like Afghanistan,
Pakistan,
and Bangladesh, they are the states with the Islam as a religion. The question is, what about the Sri Lanka? The other countries?
We're not there, yeah.
So the other question, then I have another question. What is the base? If the classification is that you just want to have oppressed people, there are many oppressed people in other regions as well. Afghanistan was not the part of the partition as well. Why to include Afghanistan as well? The question is that you have created a sort of turmoil within your own country, a country which was...
Why? It seems that somehow they are touching and weaponizing every fault line in India. The people, especially, who actually came up with their constitution were visionaries who realized that India is a polyglot. You cannot, fix that country or keep it together by actually trying to turn it into Hindu Rashtra.
So this is a very open thing. I mean, see, the politics of BJP during last 6-7 years, it was based on two things. It was actually a politics of hate we have seen against minorities and in particularly against Pakistan. So now when you build
and
politics...
India as well.
So largely Indian constitution as well.
Because they are hurting nobody but themselves.
So
their
the
country.
question is, when you have the political base which is on the hatred, you have to justify within your own communities.
Right.
So the problem is, now their own communities demand that action against the minorities. Their own communities also want to see that Hindu Rashtra, which is very sad for India, which is against their own constitution.
One doesn't actually object to any religious ideology actually being promoted in a country, as long as it doesn't use the Hitler-like tactics,
But
right?
the question is, if just one thing, if you are...
I have to go to Parvez Saab as well, and then you can ask the
Sir,
questions.
I would like to add that the politics of hate, terrorism and intimidation has paid to BJP for the last couple of years. If we will see...
Last couple of years or
Yeah,
actually
of course.
last decade?
Last decade.
Since 1992?
Yeah, no,
When they brought
since
down
1984. In 1984, they have the total strength in the Indian parliament. They have 2 seats on.
Yeah, I know.
Then they raised the issue of this Babri Masjid. They played the politics in 1992. It was desecrated. Prior to the
2,000
desecration,
people killed, and they get
then they
Gujarat.
started the same politics in Bihar, where this Narendra Modi was
Gujarat.
Sorry, in Gujarat, 2,000 people were
where
killed.
he was actually unelected CM.
Unelected
and
CM.
then he will go on to be elected repeatedly.
Then he was projected as the next PM, and then we have seen the Samjhauta Express. You see, finally, as we just mentioned, in the last elections, there was a Pulwama attack. At the same time, there was this they just started talking about this Balakot, and then their 2 aeroplanes were brought down. You see, this is the politics of hate, and this is the reason and ultimately, when they came to the power,
actually, we brought down one plane here, right?
Yes.
And we downed it and got the pilot. They downed the other plane themselves.
They are
Helicopter,
their own
actually,
And declare it is a Pakistan.
So the politics of hate has paid them a lot, and they managed to increase their vote bank. And secondly, we have just mentioned that he's following the policy of the Hitler and Mussolini, as we have seen.
Not Mussolini. Mussolini was fascist, but not to the extent of killing millions of human beings, right?
You see, when Hitler came into the power in 1993, in the same way, he just introduced the census and 1993.
33.
33.
Not
Sorry,
1933.
1933.
This Hitler might have come to power
in 1933. He started this census. They identified these Jews, and ultimately he made the cleansing of them. And same is the pattern which is being followed by
let me come back to Kashmir, Article 370 and 35A. Because we understand that 370 was being chipped away gradually, since it was actually brought into the law. But abolishing Article 35A actually highlighted something bigger and sinister, that they wanted to bring about some kind of demographic changes, right? By unleashing RSS goons on people over there, or perhaps pushing the Muslims out of that region. How did it work for India so far?
So far it didn't work, but
Why? Why? Because the world is
there
putting
is a resistance that people of India are afraid to.
And the world media is also paying.
World media, besides that,
attention.
people of India are afraid. They
Right.
know there is a complete shutdown. There is a resistance. It will be very difficult for them to live, because there will be a fight between the state subjects and non-state subjects
Right.
in future, which is
Right.
happening in the Palestine. And at the same time, this Citizenship Act is also going to affect Jammu and Kashmir if it is applied to that.
Okay.
You see, we have the
Because now they call it a union territory.
because they call it a union territory. We have the Sharnatis who have migrated from Bangladesh. They are more than
realize
500.
people are not connecting
We
this
have,
dot.
we have the 500,000 people who are there in Jammu. One is they will be granted the nationality, the citizenship. Ultimately, they will be in a position to purchase the land, not in Kashmir, but in Jammu,
Right.
at least in Jammu.
But for now, the world community, at least, although they haven't actually made public statements,
Yes, there is
but
a-
they have paid attention.
There is a pressure from international community, and there is a resistance from the
Right.
people of Jammu.
And of course it is.
Because there is
And
no
then
taker. You see,
international media
you see,
is also done a lot.
I just want to add one thing, that for the last 5 months, India has been working on Mahbooba Mufti, on Farooq Abdullah and other political leaders, that they should take, as Narendra Modi in his first address said, they are ready to give the statehood to Indian occupied Jammu and
Right.
Kashmir, but nobody is ready to take this statehood.
Right.
Now they have just brought few people from among these parties who have just fetched not more than 100, not more than 1,000 votes in their previous elections. They are being brought in the front, and they are being asked to form a political party.
Right.
So
right.
you just see that India has so far failed to engage any political party, a major political party, whether it is from resistance movement or from pro-India.
They have failed, right?
They have failed, and
Right.
they are managing to get the people. And
Right. Javed Rana, here's an interesting question, because you work for international media as well. I've seen that Indian journalists are, when they are reporting for Indian news channels, they totally go bonkers, right? Well, especially when it comes to Kashmir. And yet I have seen people from the very same community reporting for, say, New York Times, France 24, RT, and then of course BBC, CNN, others. And there they are very conscientious, and they are actually focusing on the reality. So is there anything wrong with Indian media only, not the journalists, or something else is going on?
The Indian media has been largely taken over by the ruling party. They've been paid, they've been sponsored.
You're talking about two channels?
During last couple of
Times
years.
Now and Republic TV?
And that is just tip of the iceberg. There are different tactics that they have used.
Actually, the Republic is owned by an BJP MLA, I think,
And
right?
you see, I have experience. I mean, they've been used to invite me to participate in the talk shows, and in the middle of the talk shows,
They usually invite some better people. So you went there to
in
fight.
the middle of the talk show, I said I can't be part of this nonsense,
Okay.
because they actually, their tactics. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, it's ultra-nationalist media.
Okay.
When it comes to Kashmir, they won't report anything wrong happening over there.
You're talking about the structure of a channel,
Which is structured.
not the journalists themselves.
The journalists are also, by and large, they have supported the ruling party's narrative on Kashmir, and I have not monitored on what they are doing in the northeast of India, but generally there are elements within the media now.
I'm glad you didn't watch, because that is also a sad part.
But there,
Depressive, actually.
but certainly there are elements within the media. We should not ignore them. They are realizing now that the union of the India is now at stake. The way they are handling everything. There is a method in this madness.
Okay.
And what I'm telling you, they are very hardline agenda. Something we cannot think of it. We still think.
No, we actually fought that here as
you
well.
see,
I mean, India...
With respect to Pakistan, I want to add
Let's be honest. In 1947, I mean, two countries were created, Pakistan and India. Pakistan later were to learn that Pakistan has a Muslim extremist problem. And we have actually spent the past 18, 19 years fighting that. India also had an RSS Hindu extremism problem. And they didn't do much, and that RSS has taken over the state, and that's why they only see Muslims as the miscreants, not the Hindu Nagpur army.
Absolutely.
That actually is roaming about beating people.
You know, if you compare on the religious grounds, our Hafiz Saeed, if you imagine a scenario, if he becomes Pakistan's Prime Minister, what world will do?
Yeah.
The same case with India. When Narendra Modi is a leader of a terrorist organization.
But nobody actually declares
But
him
he
the
was,
leader of a terrorist organization.
his entry was banned in USA.
Right.
It was only after he became the Prime Minister, then he was given so much concessions.
Slightly before becoming Prime Minister, when it was
But
clear
again,
that he everyone actually scurried
on political considerations.
Yes, sir.
They are trying to label Pakistan unnecessarily as a country which is supporting these militancy. On Pulwama, I want to point out something very interesting.
Yeah.
The suicide bomber belonged to Kashmir.
Right.
His history was known that he was essentially a stone, somebody was throwing stone as a protester. He was humiliated. His family was humiliated. And then he was...
Don't rationalize. I'm sorry.
No. I'm saying something.
We still don't know whether he was the man who blew himself up.
I'm going to say something different.
There is no footage of evidence given to Pakistan.
It was Indian problem. It was Kashmir's problem.
Right.
And then they blamed onto us
Indian Kashmir is not India's problem.
Indian disputed Kashmir.
Yeah. It is occupied by India, but it is
occupied by
Pakistan.
India. But if some people from the indigenous,
the army people say that they own our side.
The point is, if people from Indian Kashmir, if they are supposedly resisting,
right?
So why they are blaming Pakistan?
Okay. That is true. But I have to actually, I ask you a question, with due respect, I have to actually come back to Dr. Saab. Earlier when I compared Pakistan's extremist problem with India's extremist problem, I felt that you flinched. Did you flinch?
No, I was just trying to...
Tell me that you agree with this notion or not.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to appreciate Pakistani society.
They killed their own founder.
So that's what I wanted
Gandhi.
So I wanted to add that, see, in history, Pakistani nation has behaved very responsibly when they got political choices to choose in Pakistan. We have seen the left-leaning parties even within Pakistan.
Let us not condemn the people of any country.
No.
That is very important.
See, it's not about
people are always good, but they are afraid.
No. I have a great regard for the people of India. Those are resisting right now, made with their civil society, made with their parties. Those are resisting this very illegal and unconstitutional move. But the fact of the matter is, Pakistan has a very checkered democratic history. Despite doing this, India claiming a secular state with a sustained democratic process.
Right.
Even the government like BJP, if it can come into power, there's a genuine questions that should be asked within the society about the nature of political system over there.
Right.
What about Pakistan? We have seen in history that we have our political leadership have also sacrificed.
That is a good point.
So we
never elected an extremist as the Prime Minister of the country.
You've seen that.
Yeah, so especially nobody with a militant past, right?
So our people,
as the Prime Minister.
So our people might have participated in different rallies because of a certain reason for the Kashmir thing. We have the association. We believe that Kashmiris they must be given their fundamental political right enshrined in, it was promised by United Nations, international organizations, but you see in the political processes, just see one thing. India has never been an election issue of Pakistan from last couple of decades, I must say, elections.
Nobody seems to talk about India.
So it's India bashing or India factor is no more in Pakistani politics. It's Narendra Modi who has brought that factor into Pakistan politics.
Yeah.
It's his government that has created again an environment where the hostilities have reached the new highest ebb, I must say. We see the escalation in the region. We see the escalation between the people in the region.
Right.
Pakistan has opened Kartarpur. I mean,
Right.
this is a move that world should see.
And that doesn't sit well with India's establishment. Especially, I'm talking about RSS as
See,
the establishment.
why we have opened it up, the idea is that Pakistan, it's such a peace gesture.
Yeah.
It's a religious place of certain community, we
Right.
should respect that.
Right.
And I personally think that even within Pakistan, if we see our society condemns if something happens to our minority, they are the Jews, they are our own people, they're equal citizens.
Yeah, Dr. Saab, nobody is saying that things have been hunky-dory in Pakistan, right? We have had our own minority-related issues. But with due respect, we are trying